Lewis Hamilton's frustrated radio message at Spa. "I can't attack because I got no fuel, mate," sounded like just another heated moment in a chaotic race weekend. But beneath those words lay the ignition spark of something much deeper, a silent power struggle brewing behind Ferrari's tightly closed garage doors. That single, seemingly routine transmission masked the onset of transformation inside one of Formula One's most iconic and tradition-bound teams. What followed over the next 48 hours would go largely unnoticed by the casual observer, but quietly began to redefine the dynamic between driver and team. No longer just adjusting to Ferrari's way of doing things, Hamilton was beginning to assert control over his surroundings, shaping the team from within rather than reacting to it. This quiet revolution didn't erupt in the press or through official channels. It unfurled through simulator tweaks, engineer reshuffles, and subtle but deliberate shifts in technical philosophy. But to truly grasp how a fuel strategy gone wrong morphed into a leadership pivot, we have to rewind to the start of the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, where things looked bleak for the seven-time world champion. In a car that felt unpredictable, Hamilton suffered back-to-back exits in qualifying, reinforcing the narrative of a frustrating debut year at Ferrari. The SF-25 was twitchy, understeering at low speeds, and unstable in changing conditions, a far cry from composed and refined Mercedes he'd grown accustomed to. The sense of disconnect between driver and machine was palpable, and internally, Ferrari was scrambling for solutions. In a bold, last-ditch attempt to save the weekend, the team made multiple changes, installing a high downforce wing, bolting on a new hybrid unit, and ripping up park firm restrictions in pursuit of balance. But those weren't the only changes that would shape Sunday's race. Behind the scenes, a decision had been brewing, one that would prove controversial and set off internal friction within the engineering team. Ferrari chose to underfuel Hamilton's car, trading long-term strategy for a short-term performance edge. Publicly, it looked like a gamble aimed at making early progress through the field. Privately, it was a dividing line. Some engineers had advised caution, worried Spa's long straights would punish the extra drag and require a careful fuel load. Others, reportedly led by a new performance engineer with ties to Hamilton's Mercedes past, advocated for prioritizing front-end grip and corner entry stability, knowing that this would maximize Hamilton's potential even at the risk of a late-race lift-and-coast scenario. That internal divide was the beginning of something seismic. As Hamilton surged from 17th on the grid in damp conditions, passing 5 cars on the opening lap, the underfuel strategy started to take its toll. Mid-race, engineer Riccardo Adami delivered the critical call. "We still need to lift and coast." Hamilton's reply, "Can I keep pushing or not?" wasn't just a question. It was a confrontation. The long pause that followed wasn't due to technical limitations. It was political. The original plan had been simple. Go aggressive early, manage pace late, stay unified in messaging. But Hamilton had reached a point of no return. When he crossed the line 7th and then spoke candidly to Sky Sports about the underfuel call, he broke the unspoken rule of Ferrari. Internal dissent stays internal. Ferrari thrives on the illusion of unity. But Hamilton's decision to speak up cracked that illusion, exposing internal conflict and catching several senior staff off guard. Adami's radio hesitation, once seen as indecision, was actually a signal of the growing divide between what the engineers wanted and what Hamilton believed needed to happen. It was no accident that the driver chose transparency. It was a calculated move. Sources close to the team suggest this marked the moment Ferrari management realized Hamilton wasn't just adapting. He was testing the boundaries of influence. Behind that shift stood a quiet but crucial figure, Hamilton's new performance engineer, someone from his past who knew his language, instincts, and working methods intimately. Johannes Hats, an experienced hand from Mercedes and Porsche, had slipped into Ferrari's garage with little fanfare but maximum effect. Sitting just steps from Adami on the pit wall, Hats became the translator between Hamilton's intuitive driving style and the sea of Ferrari data. For those unfamiliar with F1 garage dynamics, a performance engineer is often the silent architect of a driver's race feel, reading tire wear patterns, interpreting torque traces, and relaying actionable changes to race engineers. With Hats in his corner, Hamilton's input began to take a new shape, less reactive, more instructive. What came next was a subtle yet unmistakable shift in Ferrari's culture. Within days of the race, Simulator sessions at Maranello were rerouted. A previously shelved torque map, geared towards smoother low-speed throttle application, was reintroduced at Hamilton's request. Alongside it came an entirely new modulation pattern in the pedal trace, designed to better suit Hamilton's preference for predictable corner exits. These weren't cosmetic tweaks. They were a signal that Ferrari was now building around his style, not the other way around. The fact that these changes occurred without press releases or public briefings only made them more powerful. Internally, Charles Leclerc's team began to notice the difference. Meetings became more collaborative on Hamilton's side of the garage. Engineers who once defaulted to Leclerc's feedback began checking Hamilton's simulator data first. Where Leclerc had been the singular voice Ferrari once rallied behind, now the balance was shifting toward dual leadership, and Hamilton's voice was carrying further. The signs were everywhere. Early throttle mapping changes, revised brake bias windows, even gear shift smoothing routines. One source described it as a technical coup, noting that the language in engineering meetings had changed. Hamilton was no longer being told what settings to run. He was being asked what he wanted. And as the influence of Johannes Hats grew behind the scenes, Ferrari's entire feedback loop began to lean in Hamilton's direction. It's not war, not yet, but it's becoming harder to ignore that Ferrari now feels like two teams sharing a badge. One is driven by Hamilton's data-first precision and demand for predictability. The other thrives on Leclerc's instinctive, seat-of-the-pants aggression. For now, Ferrari is walking a tightrope, hoping that dual leadership won't collapse into internal rivalry. But history warns otherwise. Teams divided by philosophy often struggle to fight unified title battles. And while Leclerc remains diplomatic, sources say his camp has raised concerns about balance shifts in development. The Spa incident, small as it may seem to outsiders, marked a turning point. In F1, change doesn't come with explosions, it comes with patterns. And what emerged post-Spa was a pattern of influence, a revised torque curve here, a restructured sim run there, and a willingness from the team to prioritize Hamilton's engineering comfort zone. The boldest sign of all? Hamilton's Mercedes-style data overlays, once considered unnecessary at Ferrari, are now being layered into simulator feedback. Quietly, efficiently, deliberately, it all adds up to a quiet revolution, not driven by conflict, but by competence. Hamilton isn't just challenging Ferrari's ways. He's offering something better, a new operating system based on process, trust, and iterative refinement. And the team, often resistant to change, is listening. Because results talk, and Hamilton's consistency amid chaos is beginning to outshine any short-term frustrations. The real test lies ahead. If Ferrari can adapt quickly enough to this new dual-pillar approach, they may finally have a structure to mount a serious challenge. But if the tension between old ways and new vision continues to grow unchecked, the cracks could widen into divisions. For now, one thing is clear. Lewis Hamilton is no longer just a driver adapting to Ferrari. He's a force reshaping it. One strategy call, one sim tweak, and one radio message at a time. What makes Hamilton's integration into Ferrari even more fascinating is how sharply it contrasts with his earlier years at Mercedes. At Brackley, Hamilton operated in a data-driven culture that prized clarity, open feedback, and mutual respect between driver and engineer. He wasn't just a passenger in Mercedes' dominance. He was a contributor to the system that defined modern F1 efficiency. Ferrari, by contrast, has traditionally operated on instinct, passion, and a sometimes rigid hierarchy where the team dictates and the driver delivers. This cultural mismatch was always going to create friction, but what few expected was how quickly Hamilton would begin bending the structure to resemble something more familiar to him. In private meetings, Hamilton reportedly emphasized the importance of pre-race scenario mapping, an approach Mercedes mastered. This includes race simulations with hundreds of permutations, decision trees, and probabilistic fuel modeling that Ferrari hadn't fully embraced. In fact, according to an insider, Hamilton requested a review of Ferrari's predictive modeling tools after Spa, stating that we didn't simulate that wing properly with a fuel window. That wasn't just a critique, it was a demand for evolution. The change didn't stop at the technical level. Even Ferrari's debrief culture began to shift. Historically, the Italian team's post-race reviews have been more top-down, with senior engineers delivering feedback and drivers offering summary remarks. But Hamilton insisted on reverse format sessions, where drivers start the meeting and set the tone. This subtle change empowered both him and Leclerc, but more crucially, it gave Hamilton a platform to articulate development direction. His ability to translate driving feel into actionable engineering language became increasingly valued. One team member described it as a masterclass in technical communication. In Hamilton's hands, feedback wasn't just emotional venting. It was engineering guidance. Then there's the emotional management piece. Hamilton brought with him a mental performance coach from his Mercedes days, someone not officially listed on Ferrari's payroll, but who now frequently visits Maranello. This figure, trained in high-performance psychology, has reportedly been advising both Hamilton and certain staff members on optimizing cognitive focus during high-pressure weekends. It's another example of Mercedes-style marginal gains filtering into Ferrari's traditionalist structure, quiet, subtle, but transformative. Leclerc's side, meanwhile, has been largely untouched by this shift, relying on established processes and long-time confidence. The result is two cultures growing under one roof, one evolution-focused, the other preservationist. Beyond the walls of Maranello, paddock insiders have taken note. Rival teams are beginning to reevaluate how much control their own drivers exert over technical philosophy. It's rare in modern F1 for a driver to not only influence car setup, but shape simulation logic and engineering methodology. Hamilton is doing all three. The irony? Ferrari hired him for results, but they're getting a systems thinker. His impact is stretching far beyond lap time.